Okay, so let's just start by noticing what's coming up right now for us. It's always a good place to start. Hmm. Are there expectations in your life that something has to go perfect? Do you think that it means something wrong if they don't? What does perfect even mean, anyways? What does that mean to you? Can you see how that's limiting? We can't accept something when we think it's not perfect or how we want it to be, but that's such a limited perspective. Completely false in the eyes of life. Who are you to decide what's perfect and what's not perfect? Our problem is we think we know something. Humility is freedom. Who are we to not accept anything that's here with us in any moment? Who am I to say my computer not working is a bad thing? It's not for me to say. I have no concept of that. So, what are you not accepting in your life? Where in your life are you convinced that you know what's better? Do you see the arrogance in that? The falsity? Who are you to say there's something wrong right now? How can you know for sure that it's wrong? You can't. What are you feeling right now? Notice the assumption that you think there's something wrong with that. Are you sad, confused, worried, stressed out? Can you see the assumption you're holding that there's something wrong with that? And that's why you can't accept it. But it's all delusion. You're deluding yourself. Have you noticed yet that it's never going to get better when you keep trying to fix it? Because the underlying assumption you're holding is that there's something wrong that needs to get fixed. It will not ever work that way. If you haven't fixed it by now using that logic, you will not ever fix it that way. Change your perception and it fixes itself. So before we go into our call today, let's just notice the things that we think we aren't accepting or that we think are wrong. Where do we judge our feelings? Why do we shame ourselves for our feelings? So today, Callie and I are going to talk about how can we learn to start accepting our feelings and understanding what our feelings actually mean in the first place. When we can understand what they mean, we can accept them better. But ask yourself, are you open to approaching this a different way than you have been? Are you open to doing it differently? Are
You
you
can
open
get
to admitting that maybe you don't know what's going on here the way you thought?
and getting excited to see it in a whole new way. So we want to start by, we were kind of looking at different ways of how we can accept things. And we kind of see it as one fun way to look at acceptance is to look at it from the feminine approach and also from the masculine approach. And even though they're kind of one and the same thing, it's just two different ways that we can start to play and explore and get excited about this acceptance. And I know for me, like the acceptance part was, the mind can kind of start to be like, I can't accept this, I can't accept this, I can't accept this. But when we start to look at the feminine approach, just by the mere existence of something. So let's say sadness arises, just by the mere existence of that sadness is here in this moment, there is already an acceptance around that. So just merely by something existing or having been manifest, it's already here in this existence, which means that we're already, that we're already accepting it, that this is the reality that's here and now. So it's like, why fight it when it's already here and now? So there's nothing that we actually have to accept. And this is something the mind's kind of like, wait, what, how is this, but I really like ask you to start to like feel into this week. When something arises that maybe you're kind of resisting or avoiding, can you start to see this different perception of, wow, since this is already here, right now, the mere act of it already being here right now, it's already accepted. And really to start to feel, because sometimes I think what I get lost in is trying to understand these from the conceptual level, but what I really want to emphasize is like to have your own experience with these teachings, because for me it was like I could hear all of these things and I hear them again and again. I'm like, oh yeah, I get that. Okay, it's here in the moment, so it's already accepted. But it's like, can you really feel that is true from your own direct experience? And start to play with this. So how can we accept whatever is here when it's already been accepted? So it doesn't need your approval. This kind of relaxing and noticing and softening is really the feminine approach, that there's actually nothing that we have to do. There's nothing that we have to do because it's already been accepted and allowed. And just noticing that it's here. And then, the more masculine approach is, okay, so let's say you start to feel into this and you're like, okay, you can start to kind of grok it of, okay, this is here in this moment, so it's already accepted, but maybe there's a part of you that's like, no, I'm not accepting it. So like if you think that you're not accepting it and there's a part of the mind that's like, nope, I'm not in acceptance, then you can start to play with the masculine approach. And the more masculine approach is to actually start to like actively like find what the silver lining is. So if you think that it's not accepted, if you think that there's, or I'm going to mute you, Hannah, and unmute yourself in meeting. But if you think that something's not accepted, you can go into the masculine approach of seeking the silver lining. And so you can actively look for what is good. And then once you start to actively see and that there is an acceptance and start to actively start to accept and see what the good that is there, there's this automatic softening that happens back into the feminine to see, oh, wow, this already was always accepted. So an example of this was just 2 days ago, right? Henna and I were, I was leaving for this 3-month trip, and Henna's, I think, maybe possibly going to Hawaii. So we had this whole day plan. We're like, we're going to take this whole day to create, and we're going to take this whole day to get a lot of stuff together done in the flesh and say goodbye. And then something came up with her family, and she's like, I really feel like I need to be with my family. So, and it was like that day, that morning, and in my body, in my being, there was this like resistance of like, no, we're supposed to like have the whole day together. I was so looking forward to this, and I wanted to create, I wanted to plan, like I had this whole plan out in my mind of like, and it was like, an initial like non-acceptance, right? So because I couldn't automatically just see that, okay, this is here, like there's nothing that I need to do to accept it because it's here, I had to use the masculine approach to find the silver lining, to like see what the positive was in that. So I was like, wow, like Henna has been like talking about, she'd been going through such deep healing, and it was like, she's been calling in more fun and more like play, and she was going to Universal Studios with her family, and it was like, wow, this is the perfect opportunity to say, okay, less work, like let's like just play, like in that kind of opportunity. And then also for me, it was like, I was leaving for Europe, and I had a lot to get done. And it was like, I used that day to get a lot of things done and to go in the ocean and to start to play. So it's almost like I used that kind of masculine approach to find the goodness in what was happening in that situation, instead of allowing my mind to go in this negative spiral loop of like, what does this mean? And da-da-da, and she canceled my plans. And I could have like completely like gone into judgment and all of this like negative spiral. But instead, it was like kind of a masculine approach of finding the silver lining for both her perspective and my perspective. And then from there, there was just this softening that happened where I didn't need any masculine approach anymore. And it was this complete softening into, wow, like this is so perfect. Like this was so set up, and I got all my things done. And like if I wouldn't have got them done, I would have been stressing out right before my flight. And it was like, wow, this complete softening of like, oh, why do I even try to control anything? Like our mind and like this person mind tries to control and tries to like plan out everything. But yeah, it was just like the softening of like, okay, this is here. And I think like, I was going to talk about this later, but I think one of the key tricks of the mind can be like, well, if I don't accept what is here right now, I'm kind of condoning it, or I'm afraid that no action is going to be taken upon this. So for example, if I just like totally let go and I accept, okay, she's going on this trip to Universal Studios, then like no work is going to get done. Like, so I need to like control things, and I need to like kind of put them in this box. But actually, like, what I see is from this complete acceptance of what is in the moment, no matter what that is, even if I label it as bad, from that complete acceptance, there's this kind of space where then I can take a proper action, or I can move forward in a much clearer, more spacious way than I would from when there's like this kind of resistance of trying to figure it out. So as you start to, oh yeah, Henna, you wanted to.
Well, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I keep smiling because one of, Callie mentioned this last week about her, where she has this underlying like stress pattern running, and like, it's like, okay, if we don't, like she was talking back on Saturday, we were supposed to get a lot of stuff done, and it didn't happen, and she could choose to go into that stress response. And Callie, just like elaborating on it, because it's like you were even worried about like us not being like fully organized for this call, or like it not being like in a structured way. And I think it's so perfect that no one can hear me, and I like literally messaged Callie like in the middle of my meditation when we just did a couple of minutes ago, and I was like, Callie, like I don't think anyone can hear me, like you're gonna have to lead this call. And so like finding the silver lining in all of that, it's like, okay, well, there was something in her a little bit that like, okay, obviously she's led calls before, she knows this, but there was like a little bit of a stress pattern running in her about it. And And then like look, like now there's no sound, and it kind of like forced her to like learn how to do that improvised like structure, or however, like finding herself in the circumstance. So it's so healing for you actually. And like now what a coincidence that all of a sudden everyone can hear me, you know. You guys, it's just so good. So it's always finding the silver lining in it, you know, like when in the beginning when no one could hear me, like I wasn't worried that no one could hear me. I'm like, okay, well, like this is happening for a reason. And seeing how, you know, it's a perfect example for everyone in live time, like for you. And I just wanted to mention it because it's like I can see what's happening like behind the scenes of it, because like knowing you, Callie, and knowing us, and like seeing how this is just so healing and like freeing for you actually, to like, oh, okay, everything seems like it could maybe be going to shit. Like right before this call, Callie was like, I don't even know what my notes are saying, and like she was getting a little bit overwhelmed from that. And then to like literally live on like on the spot be like, okay, well, I can't even like talk, so you just have to like wing it, you know, and just trust like that, you know what's going to come out. And then look, it's just so perfect. So anyways, I just wanted to even just point that of like masculine finding the silver lining, like, okay, feminine way, it's already here, like I can just, it's here, it's accepted, like I don't have to worry about it. But if you needed to find the lining, like, oh look, like this is actually helping her heal and get over like whatever stress pattern has been underlying her movements for so long, you know. So it can really just be that simple. And then always trusting that it's here, and then that opening being like, oh yeah, well, it is here, so that it is here for a reason. And okay, now I can see the reason. And if I don't see the reason, I can just trust that there's always a reason that it's unfolding.
Yeah. And I think that's the perfection of just like living life. Like that is the spiritual practice. Like I think we have to like sit in meditation for hours a day. It's like just live your life. Like there's like the opportunity to apply all of this in like every single moment. Because like, you know, when Henna was gone and couldn't meet with me, like I mapped out the next like 3 weeks of structure and spent hours and hours. And then she looked at my notes and she's like, I don't want to use any of this. And it was like, ugh. I just spent hours and hours and hours. And I was like, okay, complete acceptance, throw out all my notes and fuck it all. Like complete acceptance. Let's just go into this. I don't know what I'm going to say or what's going to happen. And it was like, it's like every life and every, and I could have like gone into like a whole pattern. It's like, and I'm reading like this book right now called the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And it really is like, I feel like that's the key to acceptance, like not giving a fuck.
But from feeling it, not from avoiding it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the subtle art. Like, and the book goes into that, you know, it's not just like screw it all, but from that place of non-avoidance.
And even trusting it, it's like, okay, you know, I was like, well, okay, this is good stuff, but it doesn't feel like coherent enough to where we would, I feel like, be able to explain it in a way that could be understood. So now it's there, we have that, we know we're going to use it for later. So even trusting, okay, that didn't get used in this call, but like it's going to come in handy somewhere because it came through from someplace. And then you just, you know, you just flow with it. Like you just, okay, yeah. And just, you know, speaking whatever comes up. So it's anyways, it's kind of a sidetrack, but not really.
So we also wanted to share with you guys about the emotional guidance system. And I think you get, maybe a lot of you have heard about this, but it's really beautiful because it starts to help to give us a different perspective of how to see our emotions or what we're feeling. Because so many times, at least for me, I know it's like, you know, when sadness comes up or anxiety or stress or whatever, you feel like something is going wrong. And that's what kind of shoots us into the victim mentality, you know, or like role of like, what's going on? There's something wrong. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. But when we can start to see that our emotions and our feelings are actually it's like our internal GPS. It's our little compass, our system to show us where we're going in our life. And so to see that the emotions are actually here to help us, that our emotions are here to help align us to what is like happening in our life. So if something is feeling good, It just means that our interpretation is in alignment with the truth of life. So that the better that you feel, the better that, the more the alignment that you are in. And that when things start to feel bad, it just means that your perception is not in true alignment with the truth. And so, really using this GPS system to help us align to the truth of life. So we can start to see, okay, and start to get excited of like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit sad, or I'm feeling down, or I'm having this emotion arise. So this is actually helping me to realign and realign and realign to something that is more true for me.
Yeah, and it's like when we learn, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's like when we I'll keep making sure. When we realize that, okay, our emotions are a guidance system. It's like literally like our GPS on how to move and like what to kind of focus on and move towards in life. Then you realize, okay, well, our emotions literally have nothing to do with me personally. Like it has, if I'm feeling crappy or like unworthy or sad, it has nothing to do with me. Like it has nothing to do with like my person, my individuality. It doesn't say anything about me. If I don't feel good, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. It just means that the way that I'm interpreting something is not the same way that life, the universe, God, source, whatever you want to call it, is interpreting it. So even taking this call as a perfect example, I suppose I could have gone into like, oh crap, like no one can hear me. Callie just said she wasn't prepared right before the call. She is what she said, and like no one can hear me. And like now, like, oh, like I don't know what to do. Like no one's gonna understand what's going on. This is gonna be a shitty call, whatever, whatever. But does that even feel good? No, like I'm not even going to go into it because at this point I just know that's not even like true. But if I was practicing this, I would feel into that. And if that didn't feel good, I'd be like, wait a second, it doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. That feels like crap because that's not how life is actually perceiving the situation. And instead playing with other perspectives and being like, oh, okay, well, that feels crappy. So according to my guidance system, crappy means I'm not spot on, and feeling good means I'm more spot on with the truth. So if this feels crappy to think about it this way, that just means it's not in truth of what's actually happening. So I'm off kilter. I'm not on the route to how life is seeing how, like, what is unfolding here. And then we play with another perspective. Maybe it is that, hey, this is actually really healing because it's helping Callie step into her power in a different way. Or maybe it's helping, maybe you guys would hear something that she's going to say in a different way that I would say it, and it would land better or whatever, and that feels better. So it's like, that's clearly like, the truth of what's going on here. Like something is being learned here. And so it's like never about the actual situation. It's about how am I interpreting the situation. So when you're interpreting a situation and it doesn't feel good, that's just your life, your GPS, your guidance system telling you that that's not actually the case. And it doesn't mean that the circumstance is going to change. It means that you have the free will to change your perception of the circumstance to be either in more alignment or less alignment with the truth of what is actually happening in this moment.
Yeah, and that just happened to me because I don't know if you guys know my background, but I mean, I've been a world nomad traveling for like 17 years abroad. So all I do is pack and move, pack and move, pack and move. Yet, what is the one thing that brings me the most stress? Packing. Like I go into ultimate freak out mode. My mom like will leave the house if I'm home. Like she's like, I can't be around you. And I told Hannah, I was like, oh, I'm feeling it. It's like this complete sense of like overwhelm that takes over me. And so it was interesting now with all this new awareness and what all the big realizations that I've been having to watch this arise again, like this complete overwhelm and anxiety. And again, it was like using the emotional guidance system to say, hey, something's not in true alignment. Where before I would just kind of like throw my hands up in the air and cry, have a meltdown, and then realize, oh, everything's fine. And I'm off on the plane and everything's totally fine until the next time that I have to pack and leave. And so this time what was really beautiful is like when I saw the anxiety and overwhelm come up, okay, the emotional guidance system is like, like you're going off course, you're going off course, you're going off course. So what did I do is like, okay, I can change my perception to say, what can I do? Like instead of like just going into victim and spiraling down of like, whoa, how can I realign my GPS to something that feels good. So I stopped and I just did something so simple is just take out a sheet of paper, list all the things that I have to do, made a packing list that was super organized, and started taking action on each an individual step. And I had time to do it on Saturday because we didn't meet, you know? So it was like, wow. And as soon as I did that, I felt great. And I had time to jump in the ocean. I went for a nice lunch by myself. Like, and it was so beautiful. So it was like, you know, that was kind of my alignment to say, okay, this overwhelm and depression and that's kind of cycle of anxiety is just a sign that says, Callie, get your priorities straight. Start taking action on the things that you need to do instead of like staying up here in your mind and going crazy about it. So again, the kind of GPS, and it was like as soon as I started to take action, I felt great and I was in alignment. And then I started meeting all these people that wanted me to start like started teaching like workshops in LA and want me to do this app online. And it was like I started to become in alignment with like all of these different things because I was vibrating and following and aligning my GPS using this emotional guidance system to align, you know. But I think you have to be really careful because like sometimes the mind can you know, like go into like really super processing these emotions, especially since we talked about like the core wound, right? So it's like I could have gone into, here's my anxiety. This is my core wound. I need to just like totally like go into this and feel this and analyze it and where's this coming from? And it's like, it was as simple as getting out a sheet of paper, making a list and taking action. Do you see? So it's like becoming like starting to have that discernment, you know, of when and when not. And I think that's what we've actually realized teaching this course. It's actually really difficult because there's so many different ways. There is no one right or wrong way on how to do this. It's moment to moment, moment to moment. And we can just start to give you pointers and start to give you these different kind of little tips and tricks and techniques and stories so that when it comes up for you in your own life, you're like, oh, I remember that, or oh, I remember that. And then your own guidance system knows exactly where to go and how to align and which technique to use, whether it be feminine, masculine, or none of them, you come up with a whole different one. You know, so there's no real wrong or right way on how to dive into this acceptance.
Yeah, and so it's like using our emotions as a way to like feedback, like information. It's like data, right? So it's like bringing in all the tools that we're talking about this. So it's like, how can we get ourselves to accept what we're feeling more easily, right? Because it's like, okay, the theme of the day is acceptance. So there's a masculine way of acceptance, there's a feminine way of acceptance. How can we, like us learning about our emotional guidance system, help us accept what we're feeling? And when we know it's not about us and it's just about life telling us which way is in our highest interest, it's a lot easier to accept it. So it doesn't have anything to do with you or whatever. If you're not feeling good, if you're feeling unworthy, if you're feeling stressed out, whatever it is, just notice, like Callie was saying, you know, it's like, here's the guidance system. You're right on track. You're feeling solid. And then the second you start to feel a little bit off, it's like beep, beep, beep. You know, it's like they have those like reverse you know, like the cars these days, like when you get close to a car, it's like beep, 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 beep before you like hit something. It's like that's the worse you feel. It just means the more that you aren't seeing life how life is actually wanting you to see it. That's it. That's it. So it's like the worse you feel, you should almost be excited because you're like, oh my God, the truth of what's actually happening is like so far in the other direction of how shitty I feel right now. So it's like, you know, the worst that you feel is just like life is actually waiting to get that much better for you when you can just realize that it doesn't have anything to do with you. You're just feeling shitty because you're not seeing it right. When you start to see it right, you start to follow the breadcrumbs of what feels better and better and better. And like, look, she went from like almost having like a panic attack that we weren't going to hang out on Saturday to like then learning how to handle her stress, getting all her stuff done, and meeting people in synchronicity that was wanting to like open doors for her and see what else she could create in the future, you know? So this is how our life changes. It's literally as simple as trusting your guidance system, and it's there for a reason, and you feel how you feel for a reason, and to not overlook those, you know? It's like that's why it's so important. We talked about last week, like notice how you feel. Because when you notice how you feel, then you can apply the guidance system. Like, wait, I feel stressed out right now. this is my system telling me that I'm not looking at something right. How can I change my perspective? Either through the feminine approach that we talked about. Okay, well, it's just here. This feels shitty. Okay, like I can accept that. And then it'll naturally move you towards what feels better. Or, okay, hold on. I'm going to stop. I notice I feel stressed out. How can I find the silver lining in the situation that actually feels better? For Callie, it was like, oh, well, now I have all this time to do what I actually needed to do for my packing. And from changing that perspective, she started to feel better, which was her guidance system telling her that she's getting closer to the truth of how life is seeing her situation. And as she started to act more and more towards that guidance system, following what feels better, following what feels better, following what feels better, she got on her plane perfectly. She made some new contacts for future projects. Everything worked out fine. She's even getting over her stress pattern. Do you see how everything just starts to fall away the second you start to notice how you feel and then changing your perspectives to feel better? That's all it is. Because inherently, every single feeling and perspective is so neutral. You guys, nothing means anything about anything, but we feel them and we respond to things in a certain way because it's what we're holding in our belief system. And our belief systems are what creates our reality, right? So it is, regardless of what you're holding as your beliefs, everyone has a guidance system that's perfectly aligned with their belief system. And you can't fuck this up. It doesn't matter. Like if your mind tries to go off with like, oh, but my beliefs are shit, so that means my guidance system is like must. No, you can't make this, like you can't mess it up. You can't get this wrong. All you have to do is notice how you feel, and then move either your perception or physically, like she made a list to feel better. And as you do that, it's easier and easier to accept what we're feeling when we know they're just, it's data giving us, basically we're getting back from life information telling us how can we move or see something differently that can actually be in our highest benefit, because life already knows what you want. Life knows all your desires, knows all your dreams, knows all the things that are waiting for you, all the relationships and the money and the self-fulfillment and the health and the everything that's waiting for you. And that stuff feels good, right? So you're not going to get that stuff when you're feeling bad, when the inherent like frequency of those things is feeling good. So that's why we have our guidance system in place. Not because there's something wrong with you, but because life is just telling you like, hey, I know you want all this amazing stuff and it's right here waiting for you. But the way that you're looking at your situation right now is not actually in truth. So the more you start to look at your situation of what's happening in truth, the more it'll start to line up to that timeline where all that stuff that you want is going to just be given to you. And it can happen so quickly. She literally moved from stress to like being in acceptance and following her guidance system in the span of what, like a couple hours at most. And that already was leading her to this new timeline where she would have more projects, she would make more money, she'd make more friends, she'd have more fun. Just because she started to meet people like randomly that are opening those doors for her now for her future timeline. And it all just started because she noticed she was stressed out and she applied her guidance system. And that's it. That's
And I think another big part of it is accepting that I can feel good all the time. Like accepting that I can create and live from a place of ease, lightness, and fun. And that's kind of like why we decided to call this like play in the silence, because we, like for me at least, it saw like, you know, there's this collective field of like we need to work hard and, you know, no pain no gain and all of these things. And for me it's been a complete declaration of I don't want to move forward from a place of stress, anxiety, or like hard work or this like effort. And it's been challenging because that's been so in my field, coming from a perfectionist, like a super organized teacher family that gets things done and works hard and spends long hours, you know. And it's like it's really been for me declaring that I can accept into my life like this fun, ease, and lightness. And anytime that it's not in alignment, it's like even when Henna and I are working together, it's like this doesn't, as soon as our emotional guidance system is like, this feels a little bit of stress or like anxiety or something, we call it out right away and we stop. It's like, okay, let's play, let's move our bodies, let's jump in the ocean. Because what I would do before is like, no, I'm a warrior. I can push through this. I can like get through anything. I can get shit done. And it's kind of like, fuck all that. You know, it's like, I I am making this strong declaration to like not live my life from that anymore. And it's like, even though, even like this trip to Canada and Europe, it's like, but wait, Henna and I were like, we wanted to launch this webinar and this other program that we've been thinking of and like get really organized with that. And it was like, no, stay in LA. Like, Callie, you've got a free place to live. Like, you've got clients here. You can work with Henna in person. But it was like, in LA, I was feeling this like kind of feeling of like this like just density and constriction in LA. And it was like, what felt so expansive, my emotional guidance system was leading me to, is go play in Canada, go play in Europe. And it's like, screw all of that concepts in the mind that says I'm not going to get this work done if I stay in LA. So it's like I have to follow like the fun and the lightness. So it's also accepting that I can accept this happiness, this flow, this ease, this grace into my life. And when I do that, then my body is so much more open. So if something happens, it's like, you know, if something like, quote unquote, somebody yells on me on the street or flicks me off, if I'm in the place of resistance and that happens, I'm in even more resistance, you know. But if I'm like following my bliss and my joy, and at the airport my flight got delayed and all this stuff happened, none of it touched me. I was accepting everything because I'm so in alignment. So that also helps with acceptance. The more that we're following our emotional guidance system, aligning to our like highest joy, our passion, and that, then any of this negative like stuff that happens in the external world, it just kind of bounces right off of me. It doesn't even really have the space to affect me because I'm just in pure acceptance and pure alignment and in that flow state.
It also can be as simple as like redefining our emotions, right? Like I know this was a really big one for me. Where okay, so it's like as simple as I have a really big heart and a sensitive heart, and I cry a lot. I've always been really sensitive. I've always felt my emotions very like deeply, and I cry a lot. Since I was a little girl, I'd always cry, and even now, you guys have seen me a million times. I'm crying on like almost every call, right? I just start crying, and I used to think that was a bad thing. I interpreted that as like, okay, like I'm like there's some kind of suffering because I would feel my heart like my heart would feel really like exposed, like just really vulnerable, really exposed, and just really almost like fragile or like tender. And then I would cry more. Like I'm crying, it feels this way, and I thought that it was something wrong. I thought that there was pain in me, or I was like suffering, or there was some kind of like trauma or whatever, you know, that was like in me that like I just couldn't figure it out or like get to the bottom of, you know, like I couldn't find it. But every time like I would just cry a lot, and I would feel it in my heart, like I would really feel my heart, and I would think that there was something wrong with that. And I remember a couple years ago, um, it was actually at a Bentinho retreat, I think, and I was just talking. I mean, I cry like everywhere, you guys. If you even knew me in person, it's kind of a joke, but like, I was just crying, you know, and I was like, oh my god, like I just can't figure out like what is this? Like, why does it like I feel my heart and I can like feel it like, and I was interpreting that feeling as contraction and suffering. And I remember this man, this beautiful man, one time was just like, sweetie, like there's nothing wrong. That's just like your heart loving. And I was just like, wait, what? Like, what? Like, he's like, that's just what like deep love feels like, you know? And I'm like, no, like, this is like hurts, you know? Like, that's not deep love. And then I tried to play with it, and I was like, wait a second, like, is it deep love? Like, do I even know what deep love feels like versus suffering? Like, who told me the difference between those two emotions, anyways? And I really started to tune in with this, like in myself. And I realized that it actually was just love the whole fucking time. Like every time I'd be crying, and I still to this day, it's like every time I cry, like even on the calls, I feel it. My heart feels so tender, and it's just like I can feel it, like the fret like it's pulsing. And but before, what I would interpret that same feeling as like a fragile, like brokenness, it's actually like, no, my heart is so open and my heart feels love so deeply. And that's actually what it is. And I was just, you know, defining that as like a bad thing, that I had something wrong with me that I had to find like the bottom of and like fix, when actually there was nothing wrong. It was just like, okay, well, I'm like a deep feeler, and I just love a lot, and that's okay, you know. And now I feel that feeling all the time, and it's intense, but like I know what it is, and it just makes me even more happy, and I just cry more because I feel so much love, you know. So it's like that feels good to me. That definition feels really true to me. And it's like, okay, well, my guidance system, when I was trying to before in the past figure out like why I cry so much and like what am I suffering from, blah blah blah. That actually felt really shitty to try to find because like I could never find it. I just couldn't figure out what the fuck anyone like why that was there. And when I started to redefine it, change my perception according to my guidance system, given someone had to like mention this to me and plant that seed for me, and I was like, oh my god, is he right? And then playing with my guidance system and realizing, yeah, that's what it is. My emotion, that same emotion that I was defining as like something wrong with me, like a trauma that I hadn't healed yet, it was actually just my heart being so open and me just loving so deeply the people that I see in front of me, and that's what it was, you know. So Magda, I know you're messaging. I haven't even like read them all yet, but that's literally all it can be. And it's like anything like that. It's like our guidance system, you know? So it's like using anything and everything in our experience for changing the definition, and not just in our minds, like in our hearts, like in our bodies, really changing the perception of it to be in alignment with what feels better for us, because that is truly how life sees it. And that's how synchronicity starts, and that's how effortless creation starts, and that's how feeling better and feeling solid and like being really, you know, even like the beginning of presence, like just like being in presence and knowing that everything is here to help us starts with that. So
And I see in the chat box people are asking for crying lessons. So I think like, and we're actually going to be, this is so perfect because, you know, this week we're, you know, we talked about, you know, note here, actually, let me actually share our little chart here. Because if you go back to, can you guys see this? Yeah. The essential map to eternal freedom. You know, the first step is right, notice it, which we talked about in the second week. So you start to notice everything. And then now we're moving into this acceptance. Can we just accept what is here in this moment? You know, and if we can't accept it, can we accept that we can't accept it? That's another thing, right? Hannah, do you want to expand on that one? Like, that's a big one. Like, for me, it was like, no, I can't accept this. Like, I'm depressed and I'm sad and I can't cry and I want to cry. Can you accept that you can't cry? Can you accept that you can only cry once a year? Or maybe that you cry every day. Can you accept that you can't accept that you can cry every day, every year? It's like, you can keep working backwards. Can you accept the one who can't love? Can you accept the one who's jealous? Or no, I can't accept that I'm jealous. Can you accept that one? Like, you can keep working and working and working. And then, you know, once we go from notice it to accept it, then next week we're going to bring you into now, how do you feel it? And it's, you know, it's really about, you know, also tuning into the subtleties. So if you want to start practicing crying, like, rent a really sad movie. And you can set the intention, I'm going to accept all the sadness. Or maybe you see, well, you know, you can start to inquire, start to notice, wow, I never cry. What is that? And maybe it's nothing, you know, it could be nothing. Or maybe it's like, whoa, I was told my whole life that I couldn't cry. Like, if you guys knew me, but like, I'm a crier too. I love crying. But like, my whole life, I was like born a masculine. I had a shaved head. I dressed like a guy. I hated women because they were so emotional and dramatic. I was like, I'm never going to be a woman. I cried wearing a dress. Like, my mom tried to put me in a dress. I was like, that's the only time I cried, was more like an anger scream. And it was like, I didn't want to feel my emotions because I had like the societal conditioning and being raised in a super happy family that I couldn't cry. So, you know, start to accept, you know, start to notice these things, and we start to just accept where we are right now of like, wow, like, I had to first accept that I don't feel and I have no emotion. And then all of a sudden, guess what? The dam broke open and I couldn't stop crying, like the 30 some years where I didn't cry, you know? And so then it was like seeing all of that. So it's like really trusting the journey in every single moment and starting to see, okay, you know, and I think it's like, as soon as you start to accept, it's like, I think for me, it was also like, I had a lot of judgment of being perfect. Like, I want to do it right. I don't want to have any shit. Like, I want to be good, you know? And it's like, oh my God, as soon as I start to admit, oh wow, I've got a lot of shit. And like, can I just accept that? It's like so much freedom than trying to uphold this image or trying to uphold this persona of what Callie wants to be, or what the image of Callie that I'm trying to project on the world. Like, can I just notice that I'm doing all of that and start to move into the acceptance of that? And if there is no acceptance, can I just accept that I can't accept that?
Yeah, because it won't ever shift if we're pretending that something's not accepted. And I want to say pretending that something's not accepted because, like, literally, you think you have enough power to accept or not accept something, but you guys, like, we're like, no, that's not how it works. It's like it's happening, and because it's in happening, it's actually already accepted. So you can like pretend that you're not accepting something and then go into this whole thing about like, oh, I don't accept that I'm feeling bad, like, and then have to like work your way out of it. Like, okay, well, can you accept the one who doesn't accept that you're feeling bad and blah blah blah? But even that, can you even maybe get a sense of like how that is all complete delusion of your mind, like you trying to convince your mind that it accepts something that it thinks it doesn't accept is complete delusion, because the fact that it is here means it is already inherently accepted. Like you have no choice about whether it's accepted or not because it's actually already accepted for you.
It's already
You
here.
don't have to worry about that. But if you want to go into like, okay, well, hey, I'm upset right now and I don't want to accept that. Like, I don't want to feel sad. Okay, well, then can you then accept the one who doesn't want to feel sad? No, I can't. Okay, well, then can you accept the one who can't accept that it can't accept that it feels bad? And you keep doing this because there's a bottom to it, or maybe there's not. And maybe you're going to keep doing this until you realize that there's no bottom.
Okay. Bye bye everybody. It's like 10 o'clock here and I'm preparing a festival with a friend of mine. So I got out for 1 hour, but I'm gonna go back now.
Okay, so Daya, in future,
Yeah.
just put that in the chat box instead of just interrupting my sentence, please.
Oh, but you're saying a lot of things, Hina.
Yeah, so
And it's like 10 o'clock, so I was like, I thought the meeting would be from 9 till 10, so I thought it would be okay to, but I'm gonna go anyway now, okay? Ciao.
yeah, so just notice how people get triggered, you know? Like he has the same trigger every time. It's interesting. You know, and it's like, okay, well, can we accept that he has his triggers? Yeah, it's already happening, so it's whatever. It's fine. Hmm. So it's all happening. It's all accepted for us because it's happening. And, you know, I can pretend that that's upsetting and I'm trying to accept it, but actually there's nothing. It happened, so it happened and that's accepted. And then if there's a reaction that came up in me, I can feel that. And if there's not, then that's perfect too. And then that's it, you know? It doesn't have to be this big thing every time of like, oh, something happens in our reality and we don't like it, and then it's like this whole emotional thing about it. And it can be that. It can be that. It's so beautiful. But it keeps being that until we realize it doesn't have to be that anymore.
And it kind of goes back to as well, like as soon as we accept it, um, you know, I want to also like emphasize what I said before around the fear of condoning something. So, for example, it might be difficult to accept the fact that you're broke, that you have no money, or have no job, or have no direction in life. And so it's almost like this fear of acceptance of like, I don't want to accept the fact that I'm broke because I don't want it to continue. Right. So then there's this resistance to the fact that I'm broke. But then when you're doing that, you're actually like amplifying that I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke, and I don't want this, right? And what you resist is persisting. So you're actually kind of like amplifying I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke. And you know, there's this fear that, well, I want to get out of it. But if there is this like softening into that feminine of like, wow, I'm broke. That's the truth of what is here right now. I have no money. Like I'm totally broke, and you accept that, then from that spaciousness you can actually make a change. So it's like I can go and get a job, I can go and do this, or I can go and do that. There's this space where you can actually make a shift. So from accepting the fact that this is here right now, then I can make a change. Or for example, like Daya, you know, or maybe he said, you know, whatever, like this, it's like okay, I can just accept that that's here. And once I accept it, it's like, okay, maybe I'm going to push mute on everybody so nobody can unmute themselves unless if I unmute them. Like, then I can take an action. Okay, like that was interruptive. Now I can take an action instead of like doing it from a triggered place. So I can accept that fact, move into the space, and then I can take action from there.
Yeah, because there's this piece that comes in the acceptance, even the acceptance of something that doesn't feel good. When you're like, okay, that happened, that's here, and you just stop for a second and acknowledge that that happened and that's here, there is a space, like you're saying, there's like a piece that opens up that gives you the clarity to like, okay, well, I'm calm because I'm seeing it, I'm accepting it. Now what can I do to change this in future?
And Coco, this is really beautiful. Yeah, accepting that I'm not close to my family is so hard. Like, that you live thousands of miles away and you're alone. And it's like to make any kind of shift around that, it's first that this is the fact. I'm not close with my family, and I live thousands of miles away and I can't see them and I'm feeling so lonely. So the first step for that is to really just accept this is where it is. Because if I keep fighting it, keep fighting it, keep fighting it, then there's just all of this resistance and struggle and strife. But it's like, wow, and I actually open up to say, wow, I'm really lonely. And wow, I'm not connected to my family. And wow, they live thousands of miles away. And there's this kind of softening of like, this is just the fact. This is what is here in this moment. And to feel whatever those emotions are and to love yourself, maybe it's feeling that sadness or that loneliness. And then from there, it's like from that spaciousness, then, oh, I can do something about this. I don't have to stay where I am. My mind might say I have to stay here because of my dog and this and this and this and this. But if I really wanted to, if it was life or death, I could move there. And maybe then you realize, oh, I don't want to move there. And then it's like, okay, I'm lonely. So what can I do? Maybe I FaceTime every day. Or maybe I find a community or more of a family here. Maybe loneliness is just like kind of your emotional guidance system saying, hey, I want to connect. I want community. I want family. And maybe it's not going to be my biological family that lives thousands of miles away. Or maybe it's booking some vacation so I can go see them. Or maybe it's, oh, I'm going to go to some meetups, or I'm going to go online. I'm going to go out of my comfort zone to start to connect. Or maybe a simple thing like you're coming on here on these calls and joining in the community, and maybe you post some videos, or you like reach out to say, hey, Britta, like you want to do a one-on-one, and you start, connecting with somebody here who you resonate with. There's it's starting to the mind, it can get so tunnel focused of just focusing on the problem. And that's what we're saying, focus on the silver lining, or starting to get creative, and that's what I feel like our society hasn't really been trained on creativity. We've been in such a linear kind of mental construct. And so it's really start to get excited of training the mind of curiosity ways. Okay, this loneliness pattern, I've had that for so long, the loneliness. And it was like, wow, I really want to like start to take action to see how I can um, start to create more community. And it's so easy for me to be alone. And that's actually why I came to Canada, because I was like, this was out of my comfort zone. Like, I normally like to be alone because I'm very sensitive to energy and things. And it's like, I had to be like, screw this. I'm sick and tired of being alone. I want a life. I want friends. I'm going to Canada. And that was like, I had to just do that. And it was like money, work, blah, blah, all these reasons why I can't do that. And I had to be like, screw that. This is what I want. And then like, just take action. But it feels like, you're starting to do that. It's like even coming on the call, right? You're like, oh, come to Toronto. So you're opening, and that's so beautiful. So just, set that intention and start to say, okay, that my guidance system is like showing me this doesn't feel good to be alone. Now I can start to like, okay, how can I start to make connections? And it might bring up all that kind of trauma, hurts and whatever from the past, but okay, I'm gonna like, it's like setting your declaration. What do you want? So if connection is your number one declaration, none of these other traumas or things are going to be able to exist because you are so focused and declaring what you want in your life.
Yeah, so it's like when you accept, that opens the door to then be able to feel. And when we feel, that's how it heals. So, like, even in the wheel, it's like we notice, we accept, we feel, and then it shifts on its own, right? So, as we can accept, okay, yeah, I do feel lonely. I admit that I'm far away from my family, and then like accepting that that actually is something that's painful for you or like hard. And the acceptance of that, it then leads us to next week, which we'll talk about how to then, now that that door has opened, how can we deeply feel it in a way that it will naturally heal, and start to move and work through on its own. Um, yeah, and it's all about feeling. It's just life is a feeling game, you know. If you can learn how to navigate in feeling your feelings, it's like you've already won, you know. It's like everything is, we have feelings about everything, so it's like to get to that, well, okay, let's notice how we feel first of all, and then being able to accept it, and then, you know, kind of being able to then transmute it from that, which we'll talk about next week. Yeah, do you have anything else to share, Kelly?
I think we're good. Yeah. So, this week, just, start to really tune into your emotional guidance system, your inner, like your inner GPS, and start to play with that and start to really, we'll put something up on the portal today for you guys to explore, some action steps to take, because that's the most important part. You can sit and listen and be like, yeah, 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 but if you don't actually start applying this to your day-to-day life, like, it can easily just become another like mental concept or mental masturbation. So it's like, really, like, let's start to apply this. Let's really start to see and start to notice, and like keep engaging in the group, keep posting. That really helps to just open up the field as well. And just start to see, like, and start to play with, the feminine and masculine approach of acceptance of, wow, this is here in the moment. What can I do? Like, it's already been accepted. And then if you can't accept it, you can also play with, where's the silver lining? Like, how can I start to see that actually this is a good thing? Or maybe look in your past, like, where was something that was really challenging or difficult for you, and what was the good that came out of it? What were the positive things that came out of that? Of, wow, I caused so much suffering and hell for nothing, because that was actually so perfect. Like, I had cancer, and it was actually the best thing that has ever happened in my life, because it's what started me on the spiritual journey. I used to believe in nothing. I was a complete atheist. Like, it's black. There's no such thing as energy. I hate yoga. Like, I was so closed off to everything. And when I got cancer, it was a fucking huge wake up call that allowed me to be on this amazing journey of like magic and mystery and meeting so many amazing people. So it's like, now looking back, I was like, wow, I shouldn't have cried about that. That was so perfect, So you can start to see in your path, like, the things that were so big or so negative were actually the biggest blessing, because it's leading to something bigger. And we can start to retrain our mind of pure acceptance all the time. You can really start to see everything is here to help you. Everything is here to support you. Everything is a blessing. And then the nervous system starts to relax. So this acceptance just flows through so naturally, so easily in your life. And you're just flowing, 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 flowing.
Yeah, so that's literally what we're doing here. It's like we're literally changing our brain chemistry. We're changing the neural nets and the neural pathways in our brain, and then the corresponding nervous system. So this is a very, almost like a scientific, like very healing thing. It's not just like woo woo, like, oh yeah, like, accept something and feel it. It actually has really massive, powerful physiological benefits and effects. And this is like, it changes the way our brains think and the way we react and respond. And so it's the big, it's a lot that we're covering up in just like, simple wording and stuff, but it's like, it's really big. So we're training our brains to look at everything differently and to experience everything differently. But it's like a training, right? So it takes practice until those new neural nets are solid, and then it's not practice anymore. But it'll get easier and easier day by day. And this is how we do it. We start to like notice, and then we start to learn what it means to accept. And as we go through this course and this wheel that we're telling you guys about in the next weeks, like, this is literally how we retrain our brains. So just check out the portal. We'll be putting up some action steps you guys can take this week to practice this. And whatever comes up, just post it in the group, and we all love to hear it. And enjoy the rest of your day or night wherever you are, and we'll see you later in the week. Love you.